Yo, 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 what's up, Captain Hooter? How you doing, man? It's the Carpenter. It's the dude here. Of course, I remember meeting you, man. You made me the Lebowski pipe, I remember, at the UFC Fan Expo a while back. That was pretty sweet, dude. That thing is in the RV, in the Dude Mobile, as you know. And it's been in great hands for a long time, man. It's one of my prized possessions that stays in the Dude Mobile. And that thing has been quite the topic of conversation, man. I remember that when you first walked up to me with that thing in your hand, it was pretty great. And, you told me to turn it over and look at the other side. So I'm glad to hear from you, man. I'm glad you're doing well. Hopefully, maybe someday we can get you on a hunting or fishing guide with Chad Mendez and myself, either with Fins and Feathers or Gills and Thrills with Guida. We take you guys out fishing, then we take you out to a UFC event or a baseball game, sporting event, a concert, live music. Anyway, stay strong, keep kicking butt, man. I'll check out your website. Take care, Captain Hooter. Peace.
It's Captain Hooter.
Hello.
Dzień dobry.
Bom dia.
Доброе утро. Доброе утро.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hola, hola, everyone. Hooter here, coming to you high and alive, playing a little Tetris in the virtual environment. And I thought this would be the perfect game to have playing when we're introducing our very special guest today, Brandon Allen from the Trichome Institute. Why? Well, I guess because the Trichome Institute, for me, has helped fill in all these missing pieces that I needed in my cannabis education. And these guys have been just phenomenal from the very beginning. And that's why I wanted to get him on the show as soon as possible. So today, delighted to have Brandon Allen. He's going to be talking about his brand new course, Cooking with Cannabis. So enjoy the interview. I'm going to sit here and rack up a huge score, and I will see you as soon as the interview is over. Enjoy. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everyone, Captain Hooter here, coming to you high and alive once again from the mountains of Portugal and discussing chickens in the backyard with one of my mentors, one of the masters, the guy I'm happy to call my friend, Mr. Brandon Allen. Sir, how are you?
Yo, dude, I am great. So good to, I swear every time that we connect, I can't help but to smile. So anyone who's watching this, I'm actually not high. I may be a little jazzed on the coffee, but you just make me feel good, dude. You're a good person, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying to make everybody feel good, make myself feel good. I'm going to make this chicken feel good over here if he keeps cracking while I'm trying to do this podcast here. We were just talking about the fact that just having a chicken in the yard is something that you would love to do. And
well,
elaborate.
I have a fun story. Let's kick this Cooking with Cannabis podcast off properly. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So we're going to kick it off with nothing that has to do anything with that. But when I was in, I want to say 6th grade for the science fair project, a buddy and I decided that we were going to do incubation, and his family had like a quasi farm. They had land that they would farm out, and they had different things. So and he was big into 4-H. So we incubated eggs, and I don't know where they got the eggs from, but none of them hatched. I guess none of them were fertilized. I don't even know if they just went to the grocery store and like bought eggs and like we threw them in the thing. I don't recall, but none of them hatched. So the day before we had to present at the science fair, his parents went out and just bought little chicks from like the local like Tractor Supply. So we said that they hatched and all of that, and we had our thing. And then I kept 2 and he kept a couple. And I had these chickens from little baby chick to, I don't know, maybe 2. They grow fast. So it was like a couple months later where, they're like this tall. They're all white and yellowish, and you could see like the little fluff was out and their real feathers were in. Well, they would sneak into my dad's garage, which was slightly disconnected with a breezeway from the house. And they would just find their way in there. And then they would roost over top of his workbench, which means that they're shitting and pissing while they're roosting, like in the rafters. So he put up with this for a while. And one day I get home from school and I go to like find the chickens and feed them, and they're gone. I say to my dad, I'm like, have you seen the chickens? He's like, no, that's weird. A couple days later, Dad, where are the chickens? Have you seen them? My mom, Dad, where are they at? And no clue. Well, I don't know how many years later, but my dad, I think at like a Christmas dinner, the opportune time, basically he's like, had a couple drinks at him, and he goes, remember those chickens you had? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to be honest with you. I got so sick and tired of them shitting all over my workbench. He's like, I came home from work one day and they were in the garage and shit was everywhere. He's like, I grabbed my 12 gauge. And he said the second that they heard it, they just started running. And he said that they were like in slow motion trying to get away. Well, my dad took care of the chickens.
Oh, God.
And it was just like this terrible story, but the way he told it was quite interesting. So needless to say, we did not eat them, but definitely a fox or a coyote or something in the mountains of Pennsylvania had a nice meal that night. So there's my chicken story.
Well, I've got a cute one that's kind of like that too. See, I never understood. I grew up in Los Angeles for the most part when I was a little kid, and I was fortunate enough to go back and to see my grandma who used to live up in Sacramento. And there was a family get together. It was the first time I really watched the whole process of how a chicken is processed. It changed my entire life because grandma was a cold-blooded assassin. And, and I had never seen, just a lady commonly pick up, and just, break their, and then the birds took off running. And that was, and when you're a kid, you're like 7, you're freaking out. I thought initially I was freaking out. Then it was fun. Then it became, all the other boys were running around trying to catch the chickens with their heads cut off. But yeah, trauma from a chicken at such a young age. But it was some of the best chicken.
Yeah, like that's an experience that you can look at and you can laugh about. And there's nostalgia to it. You think of your family, you think of experiencing something dramatic at that young of an age, and you can look back at that and it's a positive and actually for you a peaceful memory. It's just something that reminds me of home. Whereas some other people that could happen to, they could literally be like PTSD for life, and now they're a diehard raw vegan.
Absolutely. But now, because as you know, I'm a connoisseur of more things than just cannabis. I look for the best of the best of many things, including chicken. And the very best chicken in the world is in France. It's called Bresse chickens. And when you buy these chickens, they are, they still have the legs on them. You can get a whole bird, but they're when you buy them at a village, a place where you're a local, they're still 60 euros for a bird. They're the most premium. They're like a properly cured chicken would be the way I would describe them. And there's a place in Paris and where they sell these, and it's a half of a bird is 100 euros. And you'll appreciate it because they don't do hardly anything to it. They obviously they throw it into this thing. They have a wood burning oven that cooks at 500 degrees. It's the only wood burning oven in Paris. And you
get an amazing sear. The skin gets crispy.
Oh my God.
Smoke flavor. And they probably just put salt and some type of like acid on it, like lemon juice or something, and let it speak for itself.
I think there's a splash of wine. It's wine, or they have some, and that's it. And it's amazing, breathtaking on how fantastic it is. And again, everything has levels, right? And that's important when you're picking out, any kind of ingredients, especially when you're cooking anything. And that's what we're talking about, going from the top. But one of the cool things that I learned about already in your course is the fact that I don't have to go get the Bresse chicken of cannabis in order to cook with it. And there was a huge, because the cost of making my cookies are going to cost me 500 euros because I'm smoking the primo. So it was
when it comes to making an edible, a lot of people are okay. So I think it's safe to say, and based off of podcasts you've been a part of and you've executed as the interviewer and things in the industry and things that you've promoted, misinformation in cannabis is a big problem. And what's funny is that the cannabis industry actually is the one who's perpetuating most of the misinformation now, because it used to be like prohibitionist, reefer madness, dare mom misinformation. Now that's like just a tiny little sliver. It still exists, but it's nowhere near what it used to be, at least in the United States, in North America as a whole, and plenty of other places. Hell, a lot of places you've been. But now a lot of the misinformation may not be as harmful, let's agree on that, as the prohibitionists, but it still is misinformation. And a lot of it has to do with people in the industry that are continuously spewing the same things that kind of stem from the 70s and 80s and up until, even today, but a lot of the OG type of perspectives. And it's not that we can necessarily blame a lot of the people by any means by saying a lot of the things that they said, because there are some cases where it was true back then, or it was to the best of their knowledge. Okay. Right. But as science and technology expand and grow and change, people have to be able to do that as well. So a lot of people are not diving into some of the nuances that do make a big difference, that there is some science to back and then sometimes not. But a lot of people think that you need to use science to disprove something that wasn't proven with science. It's like, if you have a hypothesis, that's great, but it doesn't mean that it's definitive. So with that being said, there's a lot of misinformation. And when we're talking about edibles and how they affect us, there's a lot of claims that the terpene profile of the original variety will have the same effect regardless of whether it is inhaled or it is ingested and swallowed. Okay. And it's just not the case. And the thing I explain is consumption determines function. So what you're consuming something with, okay, how you're consuming it, how much of it that you're consuming, and then like environmental factors like set and setting and your own physiology have to do with how you're going to then function. Okay. So when it comes to inhaling cannabis, the cannabinoids play a major role. The terpenes definitely play a major role. And then we'll just say other are playing roles that we may not have defined yet, but there are hundreds of compounds in this plant outside of cannabinoids and terpenes. So they are definitely playing a role. Okay. So when you're inhaling these things, they're doing a certain function. Okay. But when you digest them, things change. Instead of having this little bit amount of 11-hydroxy THC metabolized by your lungs, you have this much that's being metabolized by your liver. And instead of going directly to your lungs and into your bloodstream, now you have these compounds that are they're getting mixed with your saliva. They are going down into your stomach. Your stomach acid and your microbiome are changing a lot of these compounds. Your liver, even though there are similar enzymes in the liver as the lungs, they're still different. Similar does not mean the same. It means similar. It's kind of the same. So there's different ratios of these different enzymes, which is why some people can smoke and get high, but they eat an edible and they can't. Right. So what happens is that when you are going through this whole process of digestion, the more volatile compounds like terpenes are destroyed. And sometimes they're not destroyed, but they're transformed into different derivatives of that terpene. And then your liver gets a hold of a terpene derivative and does the same thing and creates these little offsets, derivatives, metabolites, whatever you like to call them. It's not the original terpene that you get when you're inhaling something that was lit on fire, inhaled immediately. There's just a split second for that to get to you versus going through this long metabolism process. So the reason that I explain in the cooking course that you don't have to buy premium flour when you're making an edible is because the terpenes don't matter. And when you decarb the flower to activate it, if you smell the original strain variety, and then when you smell what's decarbed, it goes from smelling like beautiful weed to a slightly over stale sugar cookie. You know, like the terpene profile has left the building because it's evaporated out. It's no longer there. There's some there, but then again, it gets destroyed and so forth and so on. So even if you were to take terpenes that were isolated, decarb THC distillate, and then combine them together, yes, you do have terpenes that are more intact than they would be if it was in a flower form, but you're still going through that entire digestive process. And even if there are enough terpenes in something you're consuming for it to have any type of physiological effect, it doesn't mean that effect would be the same then as if it were to be inhaled. So a lot of words there. And the last point, and then I'll pause and let you jump in here, which is when you're making an edible infusion, focus on cannabinoid efficiency. Focus on cannabinoids. And if you want to include terpenes, include them from a flavor and an aroma perspective after something is cooked, and finish a product with terpenes in a sauce or a garnish or a spritz or something like that. And look at terpenes like any other ingredient you have in, I'm sitting in my kitchen here, any other ingredient you have in your kitchen, it affects the flavor and it affects the aroma. Now, can those things affect your mood? Potentially, but that doesn't mean that your sedative variety that you smoke or vape put into an edible is going to have a sedative effect.
Right. Well, and and one of the things I really enjoyed about the first videos from the course was the amount of time that you spent talking about all of these precautions that were important before you get out there. One of the other things I do like also about your course is you do say right off the bat, this is not necessarily a beginner's course at this. You should really know how to cook before you jump into doing something like this, which I think was, a big help, because then you're not talking down to people while you're discussing these things. One of the things I was going to mention is I've smoked every kind of flower that you can imagine, every kind of configuration of concentrate, every kind of hash. The only time I ever got taken to my knee was from a liquid that I picked up, which was a constant. What was it? It was I did a video on it, and I had to take a knee. I had to take a knee. It was a tincture, but it was a can, like a soda or something you were supposed to drink. And I had a whole bottle of it. It was this large, and the dosage said a capful. And I did the video and I said a capful. Come on. And so I poured a shot, at least a shot worth. And I had, at one juncture, I had to take a knee and say, I'm just not going to move right now. I was losing my balance. It was like, wow, I can't remember the last time I was this jacked up on alcohol or anything else. It was like really hardcore. And from that point on, I realized you really need to be careful and look what you're doing. The other thing I wanted to mention was we were talking about set and setting, which is such an important element for all of these. And I mean, part of what I'm looking at your course for is for creating my own kind of dinners or things where I can enhance from all of. And I loved all of your discussions about the set and setting and how important that is and a factor as well.
Well, it's actually my favorite section in the entire course, the entourage effect section.
Yes.
And I think the reason why is it empowers the cannabis chef or the home cook who's just having fun with friends to be in control of the experience. So I'll back up. I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to your podcasts and who know who you are understand the concept of the entourage effect. I'll summarize it.
Yeah.
Basically, what it means is that a single compound like THC is not as effective or powerful or potent as THC with multiple other compounds combined, like CBD and CBG and myrcene and linalool and things like that. So that's in a nutshell. Okay. It's, two or more, welcome to the show, essentially. And it's a really interesting concept. And I tried researching it to identify where it came from. And it actually did not come from the medical field outside of cannabis. It came from a study that was done, to the best of my knowledge. I researched all the way back to the 1800s of the term entourage effect in Google Scholar, PubMed, and various other scholarly article references and whatnot. And it was a study that was done, I believe it was 1998, and the study was performed on I don't know what animal that they were using, but it wasn't human. What they were looking at is 2-arachidonylglycerol, which is our second discovered endogenous cannabinoid. And what they saw is that 2-AG and anandamide and other cannabinoid-like compounds that are within the endocannabinoid system, your body produces them on demand and then gets rid of them. Okay, so there are enzymes that eat away at our cannabinoids once they're no longer needed or when they're not as effective. I don't know the technical side of that, but they're destroyed. Okay, so and that's what creates that bounce. All right, sometimes you need a little more. Well, then you throw some FA in there, and that eats away anandamide. So what they found in the study was that when 2-AG was released, and it would bind to the CB receptor, that there were other cannabinoid-like compounds that were present. But those compounds individually did not directly bind to the receptor like a lock-in key, okay? So what they did is they measured the affinity of 2-AG at the receptor, or the strength, its potency, okay? Like, think of it when 2-AG binds, volume goes up to 10, all right? And when they removed these other compounds, the volume went down to like a 2 or a 3. But 2-AG was still docked and locked and, good to go. And then when they reintroduced them to the cell, that the volume got turned back up. So this is where the entourage effect was coined, which is, multiple things together can have a greater effect. Okay. And it's one of those things that definitely has some truth to it, but there's also incredible limits. And there's some times where multiple compounds can be bad, especially when we're looking at targeted drug therapies. Okay. If you throw a cocktail at people, you might not know what's doing what and how it's working together. But if you start with an isolated compound, you can say, okay, this isolated compound does this. We know it does this for the majority of the population, and that the side effects are here for a small amount of the population. And it's, I know a lot of people talk shit about big pharma and stuff, and there's good reason to that, but there are plenty of isolated drug therapies that are saving and bettering lives galore across the world, and there has been for many, many years. Now, that doesn't mean that plant medicine and stuff like that doesn't have its place. It definitely does. It's just challenging from a research perspective. So this entourage effect is something that the cannabis industry has really latched onto, that anything that's more than one is better. And even if it's, a distillate product where people throw terpenes back into it, they call it a full spectrum. Whether it's a natural rosin extract, which is like legit one of the cleanest, or bubble hash rosin is one of the cleanest or most natural, no solvents, but yet you can also have a butane extraction and have some of the purest forms of the plant and like 100% residual solvent or zero remaining residual solvents. And someone could say that that's better, but either way, there's no like definition of what really defines entourage effect as in other than multiple things together. Okay. Now, when you make an edible, you have lost entourage compared to inhalation. And the reason why is what I explained before. You're degrading volatile compounds and you're not inhaling them right away. Your stomach is breaking them up. Your liver's destroying them. So forth. I don't need to recap that. So you have a loss of entourage where an edible high is primarily based off of the dominant compounds, strong compounds like THC and CBD and things like that. Even though they do have a low bioavailability, even through digestion, they can survive it and they can be very effective at very small amounts. Okay. And it's proven time after time after time. But a lot of the terpenes and the other things kind of like leave the building. So I thought a lot about this role that food can have in the entourage effect, and this role that the chef or the cook can have with the entourage effect. And I think that it can be almost as potent as THC. So here's a couple of ways that a chef or cook, and I'll probably just say chef and just keep it simple, less words. I have many words. That a chef can utilize their abilities to create a true entourage effect experience from when the dining situation. So it all starts even with how the person was invited to the event and what type of story, what type of expectation is explained in that. And in the course, I give 3 different examples of like menus and the descriptions, from, you know, backyard barbecue and beers and ganja to like this elegant sun-grown French affair type of cursive writing and whatnot. You know, it's painting very different pictures. And one of them I was like, I said, be sure to wear your stretchy pants because you're going to stuff your face, versus like organic food, sun grown, sommelier, blah, blah, blah. That has that you're setting the tone of what to expect for this event. So then someone shows up and you got to make sure that the environment now matches what you actually planted in their mind. So, you know, if you're having a barbecue type of themed event and you have classical music playing or jazz, it might be a little off. Maybe you need to have some classic rock or some country, you know, some good old, some blues music playing, and you want it well lit and fun and vibrant, you know, versus lights dimmed with, you know, neutral colors and stuff like that. You know, that all plays into it. So the lighting, it's the ambiance, the decorations. You know, if I showed up to a barbecue event and the servers had white shirts with a black bow tie and a black barista apron on with dress shoes, I would be like, what the fuck is going on here?
You're at Lady Gaga's barbecue.
Exactly. Yeah. I would want to see, you know, cowboy boots and hats and plaid shirts, or just t-shirts, like just jeans with holes in them, you know, just chill. So that has a lot to do with it. And now as a chef, when you're creating your events, you can control all of these things. So you're already playing a role in the experiences someone's going to have. And then from there, it's the food, it's how is it presented? Are you doing family style? That's going to paint a different vibe than having these 8-course little tiny tasting plates or 12 courses or something like that. How you are describing what is in the food, the ingredients, how you're describing the cannabis that's in it, or if it's not you, how your staff is, the way that the menu's presented. All of these things are playing a role in how someone is going to experience your event, well outside of the high. Because think of, like, you know, THC is the gas pedal, and with inhalation, terpenes are the wheel, kind of steering you, or other cannabinoids too, if they're significant amounts, they're kind of steering you through this like sedative to stimulating type of spectrum. Well, with an edible high, for the most part, it's THC as that 11-hydroxy that's affecting you depending on the dose. That's the most important thing with an edible high. And then it's the other ingredients that are present, like caffeine and chocolate. Okay. They're going to play a lot different of an effect that someone has versus like your lamb with rosemary and a demi-glace. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very, very different type of experience. Or sugary things versus salty, or bitter and acidic and sweet combined versus like super creamy and sweet, or salty. You know, like all of these flavors, they in textures, they affect our mood. They really do. And the aroma of the food as well. So as a cannabis chef, since the terpenes are kind of out the door, what I say is, in the sense of the true entourage effect, replace the terpenes with yourself. Yeah. And this true entourage effect is crafted by you. And as like a magician, or as a conductor for an orchestra, just by, you know, doing this and that and different movements, you can control 100+ people and the noises that they sound and the volume that they have. And a cannabis chef has that ability. And a lot of it comes from set and setting. And a lot of it also comes from power of suggestion. And when you are planting the seed in someone's head that the reason that you're serving them a 1-to-1 ratio to start off the evening of CBD, CBG, and THC is because you want to have a mild euphoric experience with a clear headedness, and that the cocktail that's infused with those cannabinoids has limonene and delta carine because of their citrusy and vibrant aroma profiles. And when you paint that picture, no one's going to be like, they're going to be uplifted. They're going to be, and they're going to follow. They're like, I've done it. I've done it where I've told people something that is the opposite of what I knew everyone said about it. And I watched everyone have that experience.
Wow.
Because the power of suggestion. So lots of words.
You know, I was gonna, the one thing that I was gonna, as I was listening, because I can visualize the whole thing, and it's all fabulous. The one thing that I've experienced that was like a big add-on in helping to create that entourage effect was safe transportation. And it was really interesting because the last two that I went to, your car was provided. The guy came and picked you up and he dropped you off. So they had the people taking you and dropping you. So you didn't have to worry about that part. And not having that concern about how much am I going to eat of this or try of this or can I try was a big difference in the experience.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I do not condone driving intoxicated.
Yeah.
I do feel that there is a line between medicated and intoxicated for some people. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying, I think a lot of the people that are driving stoned should not be driving. Okay. It's just, I've been stoned enough to know that like, you are not as alert. You may think you are, but you're generally not. I mean, there's been plenty of studies that have been done. And how those studies were done might be questionable, but you know, you need to have your wits about you. And a lot of people don't completely. And that's one of the beautiful things about cannabis is you can remove those wits. But so I don't condone that, especially with an edible high, because it lasts longer and generally comes in waves. So you could think you're good to go. And then you're driving down the freeway and oh boy, whoa, what happened? Have I driven stoned before? Yes. And I did not feel comfortable. So with that being said, I'm like the conservative grandmother over here. Stop smoking so much weed and don't drive with it. But I think that when someone is being a responsible adult in that scenario and they're able to just say, hey, I'm going to get messed up tonight. I'm going to have fun. I'm not going to worry about my dose so much. I'm not going to worry about having another bite. I'm not going to worry about having a cocktail as well. Like, I just want to let loose. You're taking an anxiety element and a stress element out of the equation. Like, have at it. God, even when I go out with my wife or a friend and I have like 2 drinks, maybe 3 over the course of a couple hours with some food, I still have a little bit of anxiety driving home, or paranoia, not anxiety, more paranoia that I'm going to get, you know, pulled over and oh my God, I'm going to get, it's like, why do I do that to myself when I could just spend, God, even though Uber gets pretty expensive where I'm at now, I don't care if it costs $20-$30 each way. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than a DUI. And I just get to relax, you know, so.
It is one of the advantages of living in different great cities in Europe is that you don't really have to worry about it because no matter where you are in town, you can walk home. It's always within a short walking distance. Yeah. You know, the furthest I can go away. Yeah.
And a lot more trains there compared to here in the US.
Yeah. Uber's all over the place. You know, I'm loving your shirt again. You have a wonderful Etsy store and I own a couple of your shirts. I think I have that one. I also have your, or the terpene one. It's the terpene one.
The terpene one. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I get a lot of comments about that shirt.
Nice.
I use that shirt. And I'm telling a secret. I use that shirt and I use the Entrepreneur's kit with the terpenes for introduction and for networking. When I was at when I was in Barcelona for the last Cannabis, I walked around with the little jacaré, having people and watching their face when I'm telling them, here's an opportunity to smell. What do you think the real jacaré smelled like? You know, and I've constantly butchered describing the process that company uses in order to extract that. I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure you will do a much better job than I did. I'm imagining it's like a spectrometry where it was some sort of a 360-degree thing, because they were seeing different terpenes that.
Yeah, right? It was like a 3-dimensional dot plot versus a 2. Max knows more about it than I do. Yeah. But what they were able to do is like really see the totality of the terpene profile well beyond the normal 100 or so terpene, or 30 to 50 terpenes that you find on a lab test, well beyond that. And even into other plant compounds that are also, as they describe, as flavorants or aromatic compounds. So they were able to have a much more realistic view of what is in Jack Herer. And so, and not only that, but they started with the original genetics of Jack Herer from Dan. So that you're starting with the proper material. So that was a good win. The next thing is the equipment that they have, that I believe there's some proprietary elements to that they created to be able to, I know that 3-dimensional dot plots exist, but I don't know if they existed to the extent of which they are able to capture terpene analysis with. And then, so what they do is they say, okay, well, look at it as a recipe. Now that we've identified these ingredients, let's take these isolated terpene compounds from non-cannabis derived sources, and that much of this one, that much of this one, this much of that, only a little bit of that. And they were able to create as best they could without other non-terpene related flavorants, Jack Herer. And I think it's really cool that they're able to do that. And, you know, if you smell the flower and you smell that with a trained nose, you're going to smell some differences. But at a glance, if you don't really like just try and dive in and take it to the extra level, it smells pretty damn similar to the OG, which is awesome.
Well, and I had the closest I could get to actually getting that comparison was I had Uncle Stoner, who knew Jack and had that plant and was actually, you know, growing that plant and knows it very well. And he said that he thought it was extremely close. He said, obviously it's a sharper. He says, this is much sharper than it would be if you were just, you know, in a field or whatever. I will tell you this. I think it'll make one hell of a great aftershave or a cologne.
Oh my God, dude.
A little dab of the Jack Herer.
So I recently had, what was it? I was with my wife, her mom, aunt, and cousin. So it was me with the ladies, and it was fantastic. Walking around downtown San Antonio with 4 beautiful blondes. And we had a good amount of wine. We started earlier. We were just having a blast along like the river walk in San Antonio, which is absolutely stunning. Touristy, but beautiful. And we came across this one hotel, which is, I guess it used to be an old brewery and they converted part of it into a hotel, and there's still a brewery, just old and beautiful, super expensive. It's like $800 a night on like a Tuesday, you know? And we went to like the 2 different bars that were in there, and they had a little gift shop. And at this point, a bottle of wine plus in me, I come across this Texas fragrance company, and I fell in love. And it is like bourbon, vanilla, and lavender had a little terpene baby, an essential oil baby. And they made this beautiful cologne. Well, they just called it fragrance because it would work for men and women, or whatever you want to be. It just smells so good. And I put it on and I was just like, holy crap, I need this. And so throughout the night, I keep smelling myself subtly, you know, it's like just enough, you know, it's not like I walked in, the whole bar was like, what the hell, is there a pimp in here? You know? So I, the next day, I believe I was doing stuff with I have hundreds of terpenes. Some are duplicates, many are, but I have tons of them. And I was going through and I'm smelling linalool, and I'm smelling the lavender, and I'm smelling little sweet scents from like Valencine and whatnot. And I was just thinking, like, why has no one created a cannabis strain specific fragrance line for men women, and wherever else you want to fall in between. Like
Yeah.
it is, I don't know why. And so maybe that's going to be my next little side hustle, because I'm telling you, it's not hard, you know. You got to make sure it's not irritating people's skin. But I mean, basic how to make your own cologne or perfume is like, gosh, there's probably 1 billion YouTube videos on it already. And it would be just like, it would be simple. Most of the names are not trademarked, you know. I know, I think some are, like cookies is definitely trademarked. But you could also just basically show the acronym for the strain, and that is what it's called, because that's not trademarked. And then you just list the terpene profile, or just like some of the flower varieties where they show the lab tests and it shows the bar of the terpene.
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really cool. And I think people would buy it like crazy. It's cheap to ship. There's plenty of terpene supply. All right, I'm doing it.
I'm sitting here going, what are you doing? Stop this. I think you just gave out, I think there's 800 people that are right now sitting there going, oh my God, let's get this going.
That's fine. It's good to have a competitive marketplace, because then you can, separate yourselves from other, and that's that. So
I know, honestly, I thought it was kind of a joke until, my wife came over to me and she goes, that smells really, really good. What is that? And I went, well, it's not what you think it is. She goes, you should wear that. And then who was I speaking to? I was speaking to somebody else, and he goes, oh yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah, I'm wearing some Jacqueline. Oh yeah, I got some Ed Rosenthal on, and a little bit of burner on the back over here. And holy cow.
I've rubbed terpene just straight on my wrist, on the back of my neck. As a limonene actually is one of my favorites that I've done, because it's citrus. I mean, it is the scent of majority of citrus. And, it's also, is it uplifting because limonene's uplifting? Is it uplifting because they told us it's uplifting? Is it uplifting because it reminds us of citrus, which is clean and vibrant? I don't know, but it definitely, from an aroma perspective, it's not like I put that on. Like, I've worn linalool before, lavender's been shown to be calming. And this Texas, that thing that I got, it's very strong in lavender and linalool. But I would say that it's like, it definitely affects my mood without a doubt. And it's not calming. It's more like, really confident people don't need to be over the top.
Right.
And generally when you have people that are super over the top, it's because they're insecure.
Yes.
I don't know where I fit there, but I felt like when I had that, the smell, it just like, it made me feel like, I don't know, just centered, like the scent was a part of my personality now. So that was playing a role in the experience anyone who would come close to me would have. It was a weird, I've never been moved by a scent like this.
Damn, dude, you should be doing a commercial for them. I want to buy some of that shit right now. It sounds good.
Hold
What's
on,
the name of that? Yeah, no, I need the name. Damn, that sounds too good. I'm going to have to hook up. You didn't tell me how your wife felt about it.
Oh, she loved it. She was like, yes, buy it. Okay. So Boyd's of Texas, and it's called TX Lavender.
Boom. And you locked it up.
And that's it.
Well done.
And yeah. Oh, now I'm going to.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It's so freaking good.
I love that.
Spicy vanilla bourbon lavender. I love it.
All right. Let me take you on another track. So the other day I had Renus on, and I think I told you about him before. He's the gentleman that had been producing cannabis medicine oil in the Netherlands against the law, fight the power. And he ended up going to court in November. They ended up finding him guilty, but the punishment was no punishment, but you can't make the oils anymore. And so what he's done is he's converted over into this new water product. And as I understand, it's being made out of Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania somewhere, and it is utilizing technology in order to embed the cannabinoids inside of the water molecules, so that the water molecule ends up working as a type of Trojan horse that will then pass through the liver, and you'll be able to then disperse into the system with a much higher rate of the medicine making it all the way through. Water. Now, if we get to the point where you can get high on water, and right, what does that do to the culinary aspects of this? Holy cow!
Everything. It literally flips a switch. So we talked about this briefly, and I'm glad you brought it up again, because the thing that I want to know is, so right now the law says that hemp is legal as long as it has no more than 0.3% delta 9 THC. Delta 9 THC, not delta 9 THCA, not delta 8 THC. In some states are trying to ban it, not THCO acetate, whatever. So what I'm curious about is, in this manufacturing emulsification process, are they changing the molecular structure of delta 9 to something else? Therefore, it's not delta 9 anymore. And through that process, that's why it's legal. So that is like one of the things that I've two big question marks there.
Right.
Now, so let's say that, forget about the legality of it and just back to your original statement, which is water. Yes. I mean, right now we can use alcohol-based infusions to make things water soluble. I still have some concerns with alcohol-based infusions, even potentially for 100 or 200 proof ethanol, because I'm curious, like, those compounds are still in there. They're dispersed evenly, but will that THC or these cannabinoids grab onto something that is, a fat base, like an oil, even in a mixture where there's water, where the alcohol itself would be able to dissolve into? So I don't know. I have weird things that I think about like this, like homogenization is a big thing of it. But anyway,
Right.
And then, or we're faced with working with a fat-based infusion of oil, butter, ghee, tallow, whatever it is, fat. Okay. Oil. So fat is easy to emulsify and homogenize in fat. Fat, with the proper technique, can be emulsified and homogenized into water-based ingredients. Okay. But water, with like any ingredient out there that is not fat-based or oil-based, is really easy to properly dissolve into and homogenize. And so I think that the ability to be able to just make any type of infusion, like if you want to make a coffee creamer that's fat-free, that's infused, boom, easy. If you want to make a sweetener that you squirt into your soda water or to your 7-Up or what regular water to flavor it, boom, it's infused. And if you can have like a dose delivery that only allows a certain milliliter out at a time and you've got an effective dose, great. I mean, the baking world is can definitely do things with fat, but water, big. You're replacing all these things that you can infuse anything. You can also then at that point properly infuse beer, okay? And depending on the temperatures and whatnot, and when you add it, and it'll homogenize all the way through, which I think is cool, whether it's dealcoholized or not. Wine would be really easy to add a water-based thing, especially if it's flavorless, like and then any type of food thing. I think if the flavor and the flavor and the color are not changed, or even if they are, it's minuscule, which I imagine they won't be, since they're most likely working with isolated compounds here. It's not like they're taking a full spectrum, RSO that just reeks of weed and they're nano emulsifying it, is my guess. So I think that it just opens up a much larger world. And especially outside of just the kitchen, even more importantly, is for the edible manufacturing world, the product side of things. What a dispensary can offer, I think, is definitely going to change, and will also, in some regard, hopefully be able to prevent or create some more natural, and I say natural, let's say fewer processed products because they're not utilizing emulsifiers and different things that are added to recipe, even something as simple as like lecithin to help emulsify and homogenize and stabilize different ingredients. So that could be one of the other benefits to it. But it's pretty exciting. I want to know more about it, especially the legality side of it, because I mean, gosh, at this point, you got to think that hopefully the government's not going to turn around and say, okay, well, we wrote Delta 9 THC, but what we really meant was this.
That's what he's expecting them to do.
Yeah, and I think that that's just going to happen on a federal level with the updates to the Farm Bill, which is so dumb because we're trying to literally go the opposite direction. But I think that people don't care anymore. They're going to do this stuff anyway. I mean, literally, it's like after years of a black market with marijuana, look what it's turned into. You think that people are going to give a shit when it comes to a black market within the cannabis industry, or the hemp industry itself. So
it's crazy. Like I'm here in the old land, the old country, in Amsterdam, they're getting ready to have, they're discussing closing the coffee shops to tourists. In Spain, here coming up next month, there's going to be a huge cannabis demonstration in Madrid. They're starting to, here they're going backwards in a lot of regards, right? And it's
so don't these cafes and coffee shops in different places in Amsterdam, I know you can, but I know that there's like issues with, you can't cultivate it, but you can possession, you can sell it or gift it or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, are these places paying taxes to the government?
Yes, and they're paying a lot of taxes to the government. Yeah. And
why would they stop that?
Well, and here's the other thing that, as it was being explained by Brett Bogue on my last show, the reason why he moved from the States to Amsterdam is the fact that he could be a grower there, and if he got busted, you just had to pay a certain amount. So he had some sort of there's obviously some deals back of the house deals that the growers that are growing for the coffee shop specifically, if somebody gets popped out of that group, then you're not going to go and do jail time per se, although I think some people do still. He was saying it's just a big giant money cycle in order to keep, the government gets the taxes, the police get the money from being able to confiscate and take the drugs, and then whatever happens from that standpoint. And that's, they don't have that anymore in Spain. And because of that, the Spanish growers are doing a much better job. And the stuff that I've been finding all over Spain has been some of the very best cannabis I think that's in Europe right now. Really spectacular. And concentrates and the hash, and I mean, everything has been really, really wonderful recently, but it's still not fully legal. I'm living in Portugal in a place where everything is legal, but it's hugely illegal to sell anything. So right?
It's like Washington, D.C., where you can sell a $50 t-shirt that comes with a free eighth of weed.
Yeah. Perfect.
It's just so
break the rules.
It's so dumb. Like, I don't want to get into politics, but it's a shame. And I really don't, but it is a shame that it's just a shame that things can't be done in a way that can benefit everyone. And I think that's I'll stop there. That's just the thing. It's a shame that things can't be done, that it does benefit the people, the entrepreneurs, and the government.
Unfortunately, in every country where everything's been legalized so far, that hasn't been the case. And it's documented left and right. I mean, we just talked about this also with Jody Emery. If you go to Jody Emery and look at her Twitter account, she documented every single politician, legislator, police officer, detective, heads of divisions and departments, all throughout the enforcement aspect of the cannabis industry before it legalized.
it's a challenging thing, because the thing I think a lot of people take away from law enforcement and politicians, they're still human beings,
Yep.
and their hands are also tied to a point. Now, some are directly against things. Okay. Some are just saying like, hey, here it is. But there are plenty of law enforcement folks and politicians
Oh,
that
yeah.
do support, that have not been able to say that and fear for their job. Like, that's the thing, folks. There's a lot more the police officers do, rather than go out and try and bust grows. Like, it is
Yeah.
a small part, and now there are divisions that focus strictly on that, but there are plenty of people that all across the world, and many people that I've spoken with, that by some type of identity politics would be categorized as an individual or a group that would not support cannabis or any other drugs, and they don't give a shit. It's just unfortunate that when you have a two-party system and you have one vote, that's it. So you have to pick and choose what is more important to you than something else. And sometimes there are just elements that, no, I really want these 80 things over here, but there's 60 over here, but some of them are much more important. You know what I mean? And that's just like the reality of it. So it is interesting that she's created that list, and I'm sure that some people will look at that and probably hate on them. But don't forget that they're humans. They got families, and a lot of times people are told what to do. And sometimes to support our families and to make sure that to support their children and create a future, sometimes you got to do shit that you don't want to do, unfortunately. And that's just a reality, and it sucks. But
yeah. Well, and I think that's the right way to look at it.
It's an against the grain way to look at it.
Live,
it is not the norm.
Live and let live. Live and let live.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, which is one of the real revelations or interesting revelations that I pulled off of the class already, was decarboxylating cannabis inside a tea strainer. That was something that yes, please, because this is something that I had never done before. I had never heard of it before.
So here it is. Okay. All right. So
yes.
This is something I actually discovered after I filmed the course, but the process of why this makes sense was something that I identified prior. So in the world of cannabis, everyone's heard about decarboxylating or decarbing cannabis. And the whole idea is you're taking the very weak and non-intoxicating compound THCA in its acid form, or unactivated form, as some people will say, and you heat it and you change the shape of the compound, and it turns into THC, which people refer to as neutral or activated. It's also intoxicating. It also, even at very, very small doses, is medicinally effective, even without provoking any state of intoxication. Much more so than THCA. Acid cannabinoids are very, very weak for the majority of scenarios, and you need a lot of them for them to be effective. Same thing with CBD and CBG and some of these others. You need a lot more. THC is the powerhouse, okay? So to make an edible, like that flower you just smoked there, if you just ate that, it's not going to do anything probably, and you don't have enough of it for the THCA to really be effective, and some of the other compounds, et cetera, et cetera. So you decarb them, it activates it, and now the magic happens. Okay. So I did a bunch of different lab tests, experiments with decarb settings from a home base. Okay. In your home kitchen with things you have at home, not roto vaps and specialized vac ovens and blah, 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 equipment that I'm not even completely familiar with, that cost thousands of dollars. So I was thinking, I was like, well, what can people do at home to effectively decarb flour and concentrates? And so I read all the decarb studies I could get my hands on, some with flour and some with concentrates. And I found one with flour. It was done by the, I believe it was the University of Mississippi Pharmaceutical Division or Department. And they were working with flour, and in the setting that they had it in was in an oven under vacuum, which changes the environment completely than an oven with ambient air and everything like you have in your home here. So when I reached out to them, I explained I was putting this course together. There's a lot of different opinions on what temperature and time to decarb different things and what to put them in, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, so what would you recommend for a home setting with a normal oven? And they said 266 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes at that temperature will decarb the majority of cannabinoids aside from THCA-B, which they said is such a minor cannabinoid, you don't even have to worry about it. They said that's the thing. So I was using my air fryer because it's convection. Okay. So when you have a convection heating element, you have the ability to minimize the amount of hot or cold spots that you're going to have. Okay. That's why sometimes if you have an older oven, you go to bake a cake and one side is perfect and the other side's a little loppy or lumpy or just like, it's uneven or burnt, whatever the case may be. So a convection oven generally is more efficient because it can get things done faster. But that moving air ensures a good temperature. So what I was doing was I've tried different containers. So a metal bowl open. And all I did was I put a French press coffee mesh filter over it to prevent the flour from flying everywhere. A metal bowl covered with heavy duty aluminum foil, another metal another one where it was in a turkey bag, which really minimizes the amount of heat that can, it doesn't minimize the amount of heat that can penetrate it as quickly as say like something that's covered. I tried ceramic bowl that had like a loose lid that just prevented stuff from flying around, different temperatures, different times. And basically what I came to find was right along the lines of what the university said to me, which was 270 degrees for 30 minutes with the metal bowl that was open to direct airflow that had that mesh filter over it, was able to decarb the flour at the highest decarb rate with the least amount of loss. Okay. So shortly after, and I updated the course and added this to the workbook, I believe, or at least I sent out an email with a blog.
Yes.
I found these bulk tea leaf containers, which are meant for putting a ton of tea, hot water, or, you can do a sun soak or whatever it's called with cold water. You just leave it out for a while, but it's a super, super fine mesh. But I mean, you blow through and there's no resistance because even though they're tiny holes. So that allows a vessel that keeps my flour from blowing all over the place in the convection. It also allows the hot air to penetrate and hit the product immediately. So now I'm able to start my timer as soon as I put this in there versus having to have a thermostat inside of a container, then start the timer once the internal temp hits that. And that's kind of a pain in the ass. You're using extra equipment, blah, blah, blah. And this has worked out really, really nicely. And I think a 2-pack of these on Amazon is like $12 or maybe $20. So if you type in like bulk tea infuser, I believe is the key phrase, this will pop up. And this is a great thing if you're working with flour. If you're working with concentrates, it's kind of pointless. But yeah, for flour infusions, when you're decarbing first, and also decarb first before you do your infusion, that is another thing. Unless you're dealing with like an alcohol tincture, which you're then going to evaporate the alcohol to make a concentrate and decarb afterwards, you would want to decarb before you're making your infusions. And from what I was explained by one of the researchers, you have a higher extraction efficiency when you're working with a fat or an alcohol with a decarbed cannabinoid versus one that's in its acid form. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but it's what I was told. So I'm going to rely on some of the science there, or the scientists rather.
Well, and you're also right on the numbers with the price. I picked mine up yesterday at a gourmet tea shop here in town, exact same one that you've got there, and it was €9. So it was $9.95 or something. So they're not inexpensive.
Yeah.
They're really fascinated that, you know, nobody thought of that already. It's
Well,
really a great idea.
either people have thought of it, they just don't have the platform and the reach like we do at Trichome to get that word out there. But either way, I don't need to take credit for it because I just want people to be able to have the ability to, you know, here's the thing. Everything in my kitchen serves a purpose. And for the most part, it's not to cut corners, it's to be more efficient. Okay. Like I won't buy certain gadgets and gizmos because at the end of the day, it's not easier. It might look easier, but you got to put it together. You got to use it. And then it takes forever to clean and different things like that. Like I don't need a mandolin unless I'm doing a giant parmesan or a bunch of them. And I need to slice a bunch of potatoes super thin. Like I can do that with a chef's knife. You know, it might take a little longer in the initial work, but at the long run with cleaning things up and blah, 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 blah. So like, that's kind of how I look at things is what can make my life easier and more efficient in a kitchen that I'm not necessarily cutting corners. Well, this is a perfect example because now I'm not putting a bowl down with a French press filter weighted down by a ring mold. So that doesn't blow around, you know, and it's just simple stuff. And that's that. So, you know, if you are considering gadgets and gizmos to have in your kitchen, make sure that the initial work, although the initial work of something may be easier, the residual side effect of cleanup and storage and all that has to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, is there a possibility in the future that there might be a cooking with mushroom course?
So there's always a possibility. I have experience having some fun with mushrooms in the past. I think the first time I ever ate mushrooms was it was a chocolate frog shaped lollipop that tasted like a Crunch bar.
Mm.
It was
Oh,
delicious.
oh,
Like just like
yeah.
a Crunch bar. It even had like the little pop crispy things are in there. It was
Oh,
delicious.
God.
And aside from that, any other time that I ever ate shrooms, I literally just ate them like flat out. I've never had the capsules, nothing. Like it was just, I'm chewing on some dried off fungi, you know? And but I know that cooking with them, you can do water-based extractions. So that opens up a whole world. I was recently asked, I won't say where, but I was recently asked to help facilitate a cooking with psilocybin mushroom event, which I'm entertaining. And
Cool.
so I think that the thing about that world is like someone could take the cooking with cannabis course and for the most part apply it to cooking with psilocybin or mushrooms as a whole. The big thing is like in the cannabis side of things, you can get depending on where you live in a lot of states, you can get your infusions tested and you can see how many milligrams of THC per milliliter and what your dose is. That is not going to happen with psilocybin, you know? So it's kind of like, you know, a lot of people are taking microdoses that have zero hallucinogenic effect. They're taking like moderate, and I don't know the psychedelic world lingo, but like a single gram, which from what I've listened to, they consider just a dose is a gram of psilocybin, which, you know, the textured walls are going to move a little bit. Everything's going to be accentuated and, you know, but you're not going to be like tripping balls, so to speak. And then there's like your macro, which is like an eighth, I believe. And then heroic, I think it's like over 5 grams. Okay, cool. So I got that down.
You're well done.
So like in an event like that, you know, when you give someone a gram of psilocybin, however many milligrams of the active compound that actually equates to, I'm sure will vary if like, depending on the variety and the part of the mushroom, possibly blah, 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 blah. But if you give someone like a gram and a half, I don't think that the experience is going to be so significantly different. Whereas with THC, if you give someone 50% more than what you said, that can have a huge difference in the effect, like huge difference. So I think that like on the dosing thing, even though we can't get dosed, you know, like folks like Paul Stammet, right, has outlined in like Fungi Academy. They've put a lot of time into saying like, listen, on average, this type of psilocybin mushroom, and I don't know the exact like species or the varieties that are out there, but you know, if you have a psilocybin mushroom, on average, if it's like dried and cured properly, that you will have per weight this many milligrams of the active component. And I've seen the dosing scales, and I think that it's a much more, probably a lot more uniform and more accurate than the cannabis flower extraction dosing scales that I've seen. So, and I think a lot of people who are going to do that are also to an event like that are much more open-minded to a different type of experience versus just getting high that lasts an hour or two, you know? So I don't think that the necessity of dosing and all that is going to be as to the degree of where it's at with cannabis because of the legalization of cannabis, et cetera. So with all of that being said, I think that it would be awesome to be able to infuse with. I think it would be awesome because you can actually utilize that product in a recipe, like literally by mincing it or blending it. And I know that heat can change, like, and degrade things, but I think you can easily incorporate it into food without necessarily doing an extraction, but also being able to make a water-soluble tincture or powder or something like that. It'd be so easy to add into recipes. Also, there's nothing wrong with just having a meal where you give people microdoses throughout and you get them just elevated, not tripping, but just enough, and then have them experience your food. So that's the thing, is sometimes it's not about the infusion being put into the food. It's the experience you have with the food once you already are intoxicated or tripping or whatever you like to call it. You know, God, a Dorito when you're high, man, is the cheesiest. It is like the crunchiest. It's so much fun. What gets stuck in your fingers, and you know how like with your teeth, and you like after having a whole bag and you eat the little cheesy goodness that gets stuck to your hands. That is an experience that weed is meant for, that you're never going to appreciate without it. Now, I could have gotten high an hour ago and finally got the munchies and went into that, and I would have absolutely loved it. But had I done that and then smoked, it wouldn't have been the same. You know what I mean? So I think that being in a different mindset, and because of the nourishment and the connection that humans have with food and the pleasure that food provides, that getting messed up, even on a 6-pack of IPAs and then eating pizza, fuck, it's delicious. It's amazing. You know, so I think that one, people are already doing psilocybin dinners. I do know that. They're already incorporating it into the food. Yes, there's a major industry into it. Would I like to be a part of it? I think so. I really do. I'd like to learn more about it, and I'm working on that actually. But I think it would be really awesome. I also like the fact that the entire world of like a lot of these not all of them, but with psilocybin, is it's all edible. I don't know if people smoke psilocybin or not. I don't think so, because I believe it has to be metabolized through your liver for it to actually be effective. Whereas like smoking cannabis that works with both. I don't know. I've never heard of anyone like sniffing psilocybin or anything, but I'm pretty sure it's always been a food-based type of thing, or even a capsule. You're swallowing it at the end of the day. So it's like morel mushrooms, cremini, portobello, psilocybin. You know, what is it? Is it psilocybin cubensis? I think is now it's coming to me. Is that's like, yeah. So yeah, I'm excited. I guess you can tell I am excited. I'm probably more excited about it than what I thought. And I've actually, I spent some time, I did a couple doses. I did one macro. No, I did 2 or 3 macros, and I've done a couple doses, and then the last were microdosing. And I forget the person who does like a 4-day on, 3-day off, or 3 days on, 4-day off. And there's this whole process. And I was doing that for a while, totally legally. And it was interesting. I don't know if I did it long enough, but I had some interesting things happen in my life at that time period, also involving cannabis, which was not exactly the most positive. And I don't know if those things were connected or not, but there's a lot of research on psilocybin, even the smallest doses having a pretty profound impact. So I am actually considering starting a microdosing regimen when I'm in an area that the law would allow.
Yeah, allow it to happen. Well, you know where you need to go is up to Vancouver.
Yeah.
My last guest, Dana Larson, has a microdosing facility there for magic mushrooms. You can get dried mushrooms and all kinds of
Wow.
size, and he's selling coca plants, and you can get some coca tea. And if you
I was
watch
listening to that podcast this morning, and I was like hearing him say all the things that he's offering, and was just blown away. Like, wow, this is the United States.
No, this is Canada. And
Canada.
he's
I'm sorry, Canada. Yeah, Canada.
Yeah, he's Canada. He's in Canada, and he's just, he's fight the power. He's just like, and he's been doing this, since, the guy mostly known before that was Mark Emery. Mark Emery, who had the Mark Emery seeds. Dana has really taken the lead there, and I was fascinated about all of it. The fact that you could own your own coca plant and you could make your own coca tea was,
there was another plant that he mentioned that I'd never heard before. It was after he was talking about the coca. I think he said was like a replacement for opioids as a painkiller. I forget what it, but that caught my attention. It's so funny when you said Vancouver, my mind went, even though I know that Vancouver is not in the United States, my mind went right to Max, because Max is in Oregon, and Oregon has decriminalized, and he was also in Colorado before that, where they've decriminalized. So my mind with psychedelics immediately goes to Max, because he's so involved with that world. But I did not know that. Is it just Vancouver, or is it the entire country that?
Yeah, he's I think he is the only microdosing magic mushroom shop in Canada. And I think there are other places where you can get magic mushrooms in all kinds of different formats all around Canada, but I'm not sure that there's a street, a street front store that you could walk into and go purchase it right off the street like that. He's very special, and I was excited to hear him just having, let's kill all the walls, take them all down. Once as soon as anything is illegal, it builds up this desire to want to have more of it. I was going to ask. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question for you, and you took part of the words out of my mouth there.
Okay.
So you know how you tell a toddler no and they're going to go do it? I think that is not just a toddler thing. I think that humans have this crazy ability to want to do what they're told not to do. So it's fascinating.
Yes.
Don't do drugs. What do? We create an entire gray market industry or black market, gray market. Don't drink. What do? We have this big prohibition against, we want to be able to drink. Don't do this. Well, screw you. We're going to do that. It's like, I swear, it's like the more people to say fast food is bad for you, 3 more pop up like every single time. It's like it's just like instilled in us. It's part of our code. It's just like, don't fucking tell me what to do. I'll do what I want, Yeah. And so I'm curious, after federal legalization and here in let's just say United States, and after that's done and it's normalized, and it's going to turn into a much more massive industry. And eventually you're probably going to be able to go to Walgreens and CVS and, your local Kroger and buy weed, and it's going to be everywhere. And so what's next? Yeah. Like, at the same time this is happening, the psychedelic world is happening. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's not too far behind. And I think a lot of the infrastructure that the cannabis space is going to, that's the foundation of its infrastructure to that. It's going to be a much easier transition for the psychedelic world. And I think because a lot of there's not as much stigma against the psychedelic world, I don't think, is compared to like the drug world, weed and coke and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like at least from my, what I can,
I think that
what's going to happen? What are we going to do?
Okay. So everybody's got different areas where everybody's leading. They're you can the most positive areas in all these spots around the world. The center volcano right now, I think, is New York City. New York City right now, with what just happened, and there's already food trucks cruising around in New York City selling weed. All right. And nobody, and if you listen to Brett Bogue, he tells you, he looks right in the camera and he goes, right now, move to New York City. You want to be in the weed business? Move to New York City right now. You got 3 years. He says it's going to take 3 years for them to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. But right now the genie's out of the bottle, and he says it's a free for all, you know, and it's going to be insane. It's already insane. And it's one of the reasons why he relocated, so he would be there. This is a guy that's been all around the world, you know, and he's had his fingers in the pots of a zillion different grows around the world. And he's the original creator of Grape Ape. I don't know if you got a chance to see part of it, which is also a very fascinating part of his interview, is that, you know, he basically, it would be like saying you invented Coca-Cola. You know, or I invented 7-Up, or something that's still popular today, Fanta. I invented Fanta, but you don't get credit for inventing Fanta.
Yeah.
Right. And Fanta is now used as a basis for 100 different other soft drinks now, or 1,000 different other soft drinks, and it was all based upon the beginning of your first Fanta. But you know, times are different now. And then we were talking about the guys over at GG Strains and how they created a stamp, so that when you bought an authentic cultivar from the GG Strains, GG number 4, you paid to get this stamp, and that proved that that was your verifiable cultivar. It's a free for all here in Europe. The difference is we have no edibles. Like in Las Vegas, you go to Las Vegas right now, you can buy 50 different popular brands of edibles, from Snickerdoodle cookies to the Cheetos, to every product that now is infused with one thing or another. Here it's still space cake and chocolate chip cookies. In Amsterdam, the chain Jongens, and my Dutch is horrible, I apologize for my terrible enunciation there.
I wouldn't know the difference, so you're
Jongens so has the best edibles in the entire business, and they really had a gourmet process where they're creating some just beautiful pieces. So they are probably leading Europe as a whole in the best edible products. In Amsterdam, and I'm going to use both of these places. The positives about Amsterdam and Barcelona is that you can pick your own buds. And I don't say Barcelona, let's say Spain. You can pick your own buds. It's the thing that you don't have anymore, or mostly don't have in most places. You can't go and a big guy brings out a whole tray and you go, I want that bud.
Yeah,
and
they call it deli style.
Yes. Okay. Well, deli style is hard to find there, right? And here it's everywhere. The bad part about deli style is that there is no sensibility here about cleanliness or about how you handle things. So it's commonplace for me, one of the privileges I get as being Captain Hooter is I can pick my own buds, and they'll often let me actually grab the bud or touch it or do something myself. Most customers never get that opportunity. Somebody else grabs it for you, and they usually grab it with 5 fingers like this, wham. And then they will take all the 2 to pick off that little stem off the end, but they've got 5 full fingers contacting what was once virginal bud. And they pull all that. Now, remember, they've been doing this all day long. So you know what's on all those fingers? More trichomes, more stickiness. So it's twice as sticky when they grab a hold of it. And it's commonplace. It drives me insane. I try to find women if ever possible. And if I can find a woman bud tender that has fingernails in particular, they work as nice little tongs. And I'll even ask them, can you use the tongs?
So let me ask you a question. When was the last time you shared a joint with someone?
Never, not in a long time. No. It's been 2 years, 3 years.
Okay,
my wife.
Okay, so even
I mostly
before
smoke,
COVID.
Yeah.
But before COVID, would you smoke joints with people, share a bowl?
I did share dab rigs you know, where I was asked to come up, but they're
Mhm.
mostly so clean. You know, most of the gut
Mhm.
dabbers I know are spotless clean.
Sure.
You know, I'm mostly a micro doser. You know, I use
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
my I smoke this all day long, uh, whenever my need comes along. And I drive stoned all the time. I think I'm a really good driver. Haven't had a ticket for a million years. Haven't had anything for a
Good.
million years,
Good.
and you know all that. I especially with long drives, love to have a sneaky toe for those. And I also
Well, you're
use
not blasted. You're not like when you had that edible experience where
no,
you're
no, no,
taking a knee. Yeah. Yeah.
no. But I also use these. Hold on, there's one here.
There you go.
Smoke
Smoke
Buddy.
buddy.
And so
Oh,
this
the
little
air
thing,
filter.
you blow into it, right? And you were talking earlier about not being children, about all of us wanting to break rules. I love to break rules. I love to get high in all the places that you're not supposed to get high.
Good. You should.
All the rides at Disneyland is one of my regular, you know, 5-0s. If I go to any exotic place or any, you know, great museum or anywhere, I think I got high in the Louvre. I think I got high in the Rijksmuseum. I'm pretty sure
That's
I got
awesome.
high in the Van Gogh. You know, it's one of my little things. I enjoy it. You were talking about live rosin pens, and you were talking about the future. Okay.
Mhm.
This is one of the things I see as being honestly the future. Those live rosin, non-flame, preloaded, you know, 200 hits. The levels and the quality of those are getting better and better and better.
Mm.
And you know, it's going to end up coming down to what everybody likes. You know, if you like flour, if you like hash, here again in Europe, most people like to smoke hash with a little bit of tobacco,
Yeah.
little
Less
speedball.
spliffs.
Yeah.
Yep.
The large, most of them, you know, that were born and raised here. So they're and they're not in a big hurry to innovate or evolve here. Everyone's pretty happy with a lot of that stuff. And I shouldn't say everyone, I'm speaking for everyone.
I think you're right. I think
I don't
you're
feel it. I don't feel like there's an angst that's going, okay, come on, we got to get going. And I need my Doritos that are infused, and I need my.
No, I don't think people need. I think a lot of the food product infusions are kind of gimmicky. They're also really impossible to dose. Like, how do you
Yeah.
dose beef jerky? How do you dose popcorn? Like, unless it's a single dose and you say this bag and everything in it has X amount, you can't say like 2 pieces of popcorn have this, or, you know, this piece of beef jerky. Well, even if you were to weigh out the beef jerky, how are you evenly distributing the dose across all of it? Like, single serve is okay for those, like, kind of,
I had a bag of
don't know.
Doritos, or not Doritos, of Cheetos that I picked up while I was in Barcelona, and it had, the dosage was set for 3 Doritos. So basically, you know,
Yeah.
they get, but
Who's doing
3
that?
Doritos for me versus 3 Doritos from my friend Riddick Bowe, who's 6'5" and weighs 300 pounds, is going to be dramatically different.
Yeah,
you know,
but also, like, it's not a practical thing. Why don't you just take a tincture and just be done with it? You know what I mean? Like, eat a bag of Doritos and take your little tincture and enjoy the whole bag of Doritos. You know what I mean? Like, that's where, like, I think the foods that are infused should be looked at as how they were normally eaten. No one, except maybe the 1 or 2 people in the world, opens up a bag of Doritos and eats 3. No one.
No.
Good luck if you don't eat half the bag. The people who have portion control that, like, dump it in a bowl, they count out the 19 chips per serving, they put it up, they put their little clip on, they put it away. God bless you. Like, you know, that is not a reality. It's like, even with like I think drinks are great, and like individual things like larger chocolates or some baked goods, if they're properly homogenous, because you can enjoy the whole thing. You know, it's hard to eat one gummy, but I get why they do one gummy, because it's like, I think it's because the fact that people got used to gummies with like vitamins, so you eat 1 or 2 or whatever. But for other things like a bag of popcorn, beef jerky, you know, chips, you know, even like a small, like, handful style, like M&M wannabe type thing, like, people enjoy eating them. So I think that they should look at that, and the cost so the thing about it is the cost of the food product manufacturing is more than the cannabis, because the cannabis now is like really, it's, I mean, it's not cheap, but when you break it down to a 10 milligram serving or something, like, it is, you know, now the licenses and all that other stuff that go into it, that's where the big expense is, you know, for a lot of these things. But so anyway, I just think that people should, like, when they're creating these edible products, they should think of like, how can someone enjoy the flavor and the experience of this food, not just the fact that 3 of them is supposed to get you high. Create something that's delicious. Make it food first. You know what I mean? And whereas any edible right now, it's looked at as the cannabis first. It's the food is just the vessel. It's just a way to get high. And I think people are much more forgiving with edibles, because I tell you, I've had plenty of edibles where I've eaten and they tasted like dirt. The texture was off. They were way too sweet, or the weedy flavor that came through. It's like, just because there's weed in it doesn't mean that I'm going to eat this and be okay with it tasting like the dirt. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to the manufacturing side, that people should consider what would the public want in a normal experience. And the same thing applies for a cannabis chef. Like, just because you're putting food in your weed, just because you're putting weed in your food, doesn't mean that the food should be subpar or should miss something, or you shouldn't consider texture, or you shouldn't consider the contrast in textures and flavors, or the appearance of it. Like, all those things with food should be looked at first. And then you got to make sure that the cannabis included in there is going to provide the experience you're hoping that it will, but also that it's not affecting the flavor in a negative way. Because, you know, food is a great way to normalize cannabis, because food brings people together. It brings most people, a lot more people together than what cannabis does. Those who are in the cannabis industry, God, even have a hard time coming together with cannabis. So I think the combination of the two is amazing, but I think one of the best ways to normalize cannabis through food is by making the food super familiar. Super familiar. Don't make a meatloaf that tastes like a cow's regurgitated freaking chum.
But you know, since our show is a wake and bake show, and you know, like, for me, you've got 2 options again in your day. You either got nothing to do during the day, or you got everything to do during the day, for me, you know.
Yeah.
And so that really makes the decision about how I'm going to go about my wake and bake experience. Now, I'm thinking again mostly just from an inhalation standpoint. From a culinary standpoint, can you tell us, or give me an idea of what might be, like, if I had a sativa flower and I had a busy day, don't have a lot of time, but maybe I've already got some flower decarbed. What might be a good idea? I mean, could I scramble up some eggs? Is it something that, what would be an easy idea for somebody at home to be able to get a good start on their day?
Sure. So, well, since we're talking about edible, not inhalation, correct?
Edible now. Yeah,
Okay.
edible. So I got the inhale.
Kind of what I was talking about earlier about how it doesn't matter about the terpene profile with edibles. So it doesn't matter if it's labeled as indica, sativa, hybrid, BLM, BLHD, this, that, whatever the type 1, type 5, it doesn't matter with an edible. If you've got decarbed weed, and you have an infusion, you have some olive oil, you've got some butter, some ghee, or whatever, a tincture, whatever it may be, you can honestly infuse anything. You can make yourself an open face avocado toast sandwich with a dippy egg over top and some everything bagel seasoning, and take your MCT oil tincture and just drop your dose right on top. One of the things that I did every day for about 4 years, I'd say, is a fat coffee, or about 3 years. I was doing keto, and I drank my fat coffee every single day with MCT oil. I did 2 tablespoons of brain octane oil, bulletproof, 2 tablespoons of butter. I would do half and half. Sometimes I'd even put like a little dash of cinnamon in there just for a change of flavor, or some cocoa powder, just pure cocoa powder, not to get like the sweet chocolate, but that element of chocolate. And I would blend that with a 2.5 to 5 milligram dose of THC, and sometimes some CBD as well. And I would usually use an infused olive oil or MCT oil. And it was that simple. And it was just like clockwork. make my coffee. And what I loved doing was, especially like on a work day, I would do like 2.5 milligrams. On days where before I was full time with Trichome, when I was doing other work, doing like product demos and recipes as a brand ambassador for different brands within like natural grocery stores, and I would set up a table and do sampling and demos and sales as well. And I loved it because like I would be sipping on my coffee as I was headed there, and then like after I got my demo thing set up and my recipes done, like that first 2.5, half my coffee would kick in, and and then that other, and I my first like 2 hours of like my 4 to 6 hour long little demo there, I just had this like feel good, just chill. I loved it. It was really enjoyable. On my days off, generally a 10 milligram dose, because I enjoyed, walking the dogs high and, vacuuming, cleaning up all the freaking dog hair from the dogs. Like, with, doing chores stoned is definitely a lot better than not. Let's be real, So, but it's easy to infuse a fat into anything that's fat based or anything that pairs well with it. Let's say if you're making eggs, you don't want to cook with your infusion. So don't fry your eggs or cook your scrambled eggs with an infused butter. Maybe if you're doing a low and slow scramble, you could get away with it, but I tend to reserve my infusions for finishing or adding to things afterwards. So like, let's say you love eggs and you love like buffalo sauce, which is like Frank's Red Hot and butter. Well, use infused butter, blend it with your Frank's Red Hot, make your buffalo sauce, make your dose, and then have that you put a tablespoon on your eggs in the morning. Boom. There you go.
Done.
Yeah, it's simple. Oh, and the best buffalo sauce in the world is 2 ingredients, but it's just how you act. Well, not 2 ingredients originally, but 2 ingredients for you from your pantry. So what you want to do is you want to take 1 part butter to 3 parts Frank's Red Hot. Okay. You're going to melt the butter so it's just melted. Okay. You don't want it to be spitting and bubbling and like looking clear. Just melt it so it's like cloudy and there's no solid forms of butter anywhere, okay? And that butter will be nice and warm, and you're gonna put that into a bowl. You can even melt it in a bowl in the microwave if you want to. So once you melt your butter, then you're gonna take room temperature Frank's Red Hot, and you're gonna slowly pour it in as you're whisking. And that is going to emulsify the butter into it. And then as that room temperature Frank's Red Hot is cooling the butter, it's firming up, and it is thickening your sauce. Whisk that together, boop, 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 you're good to go. You can store that in the refrigerator, and it won't get too thick in the fridge because there's less butter than there is the Frank. So it'll be malleable. So you could go in, you could scoop off a tablespoon, boop, and a tablespoon of hot sauce. I think is a little shy, but it's, it might be a good amount. And at the very end, when your eggs are coming out of the pan, throw that in there, mix it around a little, and dump it out. Boom. It'll heat up the sauce so it's not hot. And now you've got hot sauce on your eggs. Make a chimichurri to put on your, there's so many different things you can do. And on the sweet side as well, it just depends what you do for breakfast or lunch or whatever. There's so many ways to infuse food. And at the end of the day, you can always take a teaspoon or whatever your dose is of regular good old fashioned olive oil and just eat it. I've done that countless times.
Well, anybody who's followed you on Instagram knows of your egg mastery, and I have to tell you that you have inspired many of us who have thought that we were pretty good at this. You're sick, dude. You've gotten out of control. What's the most eggs that you've ever flipped? What's the most?
It's so 10.
10.
But now I have to do a dozen. So it's so funny. Between myself and even Max and Trichome, but let's just say not so much Max because he doesn't do a lot of reels, But
Yeah.
between my page and Trichome, reels are the thing on Instagram. Like if you're not doing
Yeah.
reels, you're not growing. It is what it is. Or at least you're not growing fast enough. So we
Mhm.
started doing reels, and we've gotten some reels to get like 15,000 views, 30,000, 40,000 views, and
Yeah.
that's the max.
Yeah.
My dumb freaking 6-second egg video of me flipping 10 eggs has over 100,000 views.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because like there's so much stuff that I can talk about in reels. All the stuff that we talked about, I can nerd out and educate the shit out of people about cannabis and cooking and all these different things. But you know what fucking does it? Whoop, a little quick egg flip, because that's what people want. So I got to find a way to like do more of that. That's like on the cannabis side, maybe. It's just so funny how the simplest things are what people want to see now.
It is.
So anyone
man.
who's listening to this podcast and listens to podcasts and enjoys a long format conversation instead of just this squirrel, like thank you. I sincerely, I'm sure I know Hooter does. I can speak for Captain, my captain here. Thanks you for listening to all the things that we have to say in future podcasts, because it means a lot that it's not just like flashy objects jingling keys everywhere.
But it is impressive as hell that you're flipping 10 eggs. I have to tell you, it's one of those things that it's just from a manly standpoint, manly, and I flip a lot of eggs. It's impressive as hell to do. I can't wait to see you flip 12 eggs, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm gonna do. It's funny. We just did a Costco run, so I've got a ton of eggs. I eat a ton of eggs. Like someone that actually used to work for my family restaurant, because I posted it on my Facebook page as well. He goes, how many people did that feed? Because that doesn't look like the body of a man who eats 10 eggs. and it's so funny because it's true. But I just downed 6 or 7 eggs right before we connected. Yeah. And I could easily eat 10 or 12 at a time because I eat carnivore for the most
you're
part.
Carnivore. You're a carnivore diet guy. Yeah.
That's my shirt. So like I am a diehard protein dude. I started adding some fruit into my diet, which I'm really enjoying, and it doesn't negatively affect me. Plants, I think, are made for smoking and drinking, to be honest with you.
There you go.
But it's funny because I can eat like 1.5 pounds of ground beef and form like 4 little burger patties, eat that and feel tight in my core, not bloated. Like I'm ready, and then wake up the next morning and lose weight. It's like the weirdest thing. But so eating a dozen eggs will be just like, okay,
do you work out too? Do you work out?
I walk. Yep. When I'm on conference calls, I've got a long skinny, I do figure eights through here and laps. But I walk my dogs 2 to 5 mile. Well, so I like to say more 5, but I walk a lot. I also recently, it's interesting because I got the motorcycle, and you don't realize how much of a physical exercise, how much of a workout it is, like balancing that bike and even coming to a stop and standing with it, and you're especially with the heat here, burning calories. But no, me and exercise don't work well together because of my back issues. And everyone's like, well, you should exercise and it'll help your back. And yeah, you're probably right. It's just every time I start something new, it ends up hurting me. So I need someone to I need to get like a legit physical trainer to like guide me through that process. But anyway, the way I keep in shape and I go through weight fluctuations drastically. I just recently lost like 15 pounds the past month. Going back to carnivore and being strict about it. And I just feel so much better when I eat this way. And what's interesting is when I was doing keto 5 years ago, I started it. I lost over the course of, I want to say about 3 months, I lost like 20 to 25 pounds, and I hit a plateau. And I could not, like, it just stopped. Then I moved to California from Texas, and I started using cannabis every day. Yeah. And my weight loss started losing weight again. And so the further I got into it, one of the things I found very interesting is that some cannabinoids affect other receptors outside of the endocannabinoid system. And one of these group of receptors are called PPAR receptors. So it's like peroxisome proliferator activated receptors or something. I probably butchered that, but
Say
PPAR.
that. Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
say that
right.
3 times in a row real fast.
Yeah. No. And so, but one of these like types of PPAR receptors, like the gamma receptor or something, modulates energy metabolism or function. How do they word it? Its goal is to achieve homeostasis with energy metabolism. So it helps burn glucose and it helps burn fats. And so THC can activate this receptor, which can increase energy metabolism. So I think that part of where, and what's interesting is the weight loss spot that I hit was right at 190 pounds. I was at 217. I got down to 190 and I plateaued. Then I started using cannabis every day and my weight I got down to 165. Now,
Wow.
I was still drinking alcohol, but not as much. And I was pretty strict with my diet, but I would still have cheat days and whatnot. Well, we don't need to dive into this whole thing, or we can, whatever. But I started having some adverse effects from THC a couple years ago. And I drastically reduced my THC consumption. And I slowly started putting on weight. And even doing carnivore and keto back and forth, it's like my body found its way back up to 190, and that's where it likes to stay. And whether I exercise more, drink less, eat less, do different, it's like I can't get out of this like 186 to 190 mark. And so what's really interesting is, and that's where I'm getting back to right now. And I think that it's almost like, unless I were to exercise or do something very, very different and a significant calorie deficit, which I don't want to do, carnivore is like the only way that I'm able to lose weight. But even with that, when I'm strict with it, I have a hell of a time getting past that little mark. So it's almost like my body is saying, hey, you're just going to have to deal with a little bit extra here and here because this is where we want you. But THC said, no. We're going to bring you down to here, and we're really going to get you fit. I mean, I had a V down here and all that. I was like, shit, I felt good. I felt the best I had since I was like 16 at that point. And I really do think the cannabis played a major role in the weight loss as well as the weight gain when I stopped using it regularly. So,
so we don't need Weight Watchers. We need Weed Watchers is what you need. That's the move.
This is why you're so brilliant. You have such a good marketing mind.
Let's go. I can see it.
In the different conversations we've had, you always say things like that are like on the money.
Ready.
Yeah, trademark that like right now. Yeah, all right. I'll do the cologne and perfume.
Yeah,
you do the Weed Watchers, and then we'll join forces and be like, when you're on Weed Watchers, you're missing how you smell.
Well, I'm thinking about those pre-made packages, those pre-made meals they used to sell on the Weight Watchers. They made all of their time. You'd have to get a whole week's worth. We could already have the pre-infused meal packets delivered right to your door.
That's the thing, man. That is the future. That is where this will be. When prohibition is over and everyone got bored with not being told not to do anything anymore. What's next? I'm really curious what the next thing is going to be because I don't know what it is. And I hope it's not something that we currently have that we're taking for granted. A freedom that and then that's pulled away. I hope that's not the fight, but there'll be something. But eventually it literally, man, I'm going to go on Amazon Weed and I'm going to say boop, boop, boop. And it's going to be here in 15 minutes to 1 day and everyone's going to be able to get it. It's so weird. I mean, you can order alcohol. Yeah. You can order alcohol, wine boxes, all that. You upload your ID right on their app. I actually had some ethanol delivered once in Florida and they didn't check my ID. I had ethanol delivered here in Texas and FedEx put a thing on the door and didn't say who it was from or what I had to do. And I was just coming back from a dog walk and I saw the guy at the door. I'm like, hey, what do I need to sign for? And I saw who it was from. I was like, oh, it's 200 proof ethanol alcohol. No wonder they need to check my ID. But anyway, I just thought it like with that is, and people already get weed delivered right now in legal states. It's honestly, it's just, and I'm pretty sure Jeff Bezos has already said that he supports cannabis. He's and like they're working on all these big companies. Coca-Cola, I know for a fact that Coca-Cola and the sister companies have been looking into this because I know someone who was working on a project with them and they basically said it's done. It's just a matter of that little switch being turned on. They're ready to rock, especially on the CBD side. Like once the FDA actually says that it's like a food approved as a food grade product type thing, that they're and I don't think they have yet, which is why these big companies have it. I can't remember all the ins and outs what's going on with that, but they're going to everything. Amazon, Coca-Cola, Heinz, freaking Boys of Texas is going to be throwing it in their freaking perfume.
It's probably what's holding up federal legalization is all of these companies are having to get all their patents into place so that when they release Heinz ketchup, OG, Kush, bold flavor, it's already going to be.
I hope they call it Heinz 58.
Heinz 58. Wouldn't that be?
That one extra little freaking delicious ingredient.
The one you need. The one you need.
It's a weird thing because like, okay, I have a lot of respect for you with the time that you've put into the cannabis space, much more than I have. Okay. We have an age difference. We have career choice differences. We have location differences, etc. There's also a big difference between Max and I. Max has been, was picketing. He was running around the state or the Capitol building or whatever in Denver with a pot plant in his backpack with like protesting. In my eyes, Max, although younger than me, Max is an OG.
Yes.
You're an OG. There are so many people that have paved the road and painted the lines and put up warning signs at the bends, so to speak, for people like me. And the joke with Max and I is like, he's an OG and I'm a new G. Like I am not, I don't come from that. I didn't protest and whatnot. So like my way of like kind of being an activist is actually through food. That's my thing. I think food, because of how normal it is the vessel to really help be one of the final things. Now that a lot of the dust has settled from the work that so many people that I admire, even if I don't know their names, or know their whole story, I admire for what they've done because the dust, a lot of it has settled. And now there's people like myself who are able to create a career out of thin air because of that. And there's there's so much appreciation that goes out there. But what I was thinking earlier on when you mentioned Dana, and from listening to his background in the podcast, and I know he got into some legal trouble and different things like that, and the stuff that he's done, and so many other people, many that still are in jail. You have in your Rolodex a lot of OGs. You have a lot of people who have fought for people like me to be able to do what I'm doing, or just people like whoever neighbor to be able to go and buy some hemp, let alone someone to go buy some marijuana legally, and I have a lot of appreciation for that. But what I want to say is I'm grateful that you would invite me on your podcast because of the fact that generally you're rolling with some like OG heavy hitters that, have like this massive story and it's amazing. So it's not that I feel out of place. It's that it is a different, I'm sure it's a different conversation and whatnot. So anyway, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really cool to have that.
Let me address that because I think it's really important. In both of the case with you and with Max, again, I've been around a lot of very sharp people and a lot of people who are great educators and people have had all these great experiences. In the last 5 years, Max and yourself I have learned more about the industry, more about cannabis in the last 5 years from the both of you than I have from any of these other sources.
Hmm.
The technical, the important elements of this flower and of concentrates, and now with the cuisine, have all been presented in the most wonderful format. And uh, I've told the story many times, but I mean, Max literally saved me, and there's that word again, saved my book 2 weeks into beginning to write it, because I was getting, for the first time in my entire life, I was, by going to all of these coffee shops back to back to back, I was now getting deluged with all of the differences in the cultivar names versus what they actually were. And I was, I thought I knew what I was talking about. And there was my expertise as far as my experience was there, but my knowledge and the true understanding of what I was looking at blindly was not something that I had in place. And interpreting was the missing piece for my it was the last piece for my puzzle that I needed, because I had all the rest of it there, but I didn't know exactly how to properly apply it in the way that I needed to. And then I had the ultimate opportunity to utilize it by writing that book, right? So now I'm utilizing it for the rest of and it was, then I knew the value of it immediately. And Max is one of the most unique and brilliant young men that I don't know how much younger he is of me, but I consider him a mentor to me. I consider you to be a mentor to me. I've learned so much from you. And I thank you so much, because what both of you guys put together there, and your elements and how you work off of each other is phenomenal. And the videos that we utilize in order to go through that interpreting course, and what you've done since then with the other courses that you've added on, and now with the new culinary, it's just been a phenomenal thing for me. And I've been promoting you from the time that I started writing that book. And I will continue to do so, because whenever people ask me all the time, how do we do this? This is the first step. You need to go here and learn what the hell you're talking about. Once you understand the plant from this perspective, you can grow in a million other directions that you want to. And again, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have both of you on as soon as I could in this initial stage, because every one of these people that have been on the show so far have been instrumental in teaching me one thing or another. You two have been the power horse. You've been like the Encyclopedia Britannica being thrown at me from all sides, and you've earned all of that. So,
well, that is very amazing to hear. Thank you. I a lot of feels.
That's great. I'm glad.
It sometimes in a space where Trichome as a whole, even myself, before I really got involved with Trichome as a consultant, let alone a partner, and most of it was probably influenced because I was a student of Trichome first and student of Max, is that it's always been going against the grain. There's a lot of things that we discuss that go again. I mean, God, the arguments, not arguments, but debates that, and all the things that people have tried to explain to me, why mango makes them higher, and how wrong I am to explain how it doesn't, even though I can break all these different things down. Sorry, folks, spoiler alert, that's called placebo. It's not mango. Okay. So, but here's the deal. When we're in the spotlight, because we've put ourselves there, Trichome has invested a lot of time, effort, and energy and finances into creating these courses and putting them out into the public space. You open yourself up for a lot of bullshit, especially when you're not telling people what they want to hear. People don't always want to hear what they want to hear. You heard something different from what you said earlier. You said what you thought, and you had every ability to go forward based off of what you thought. And then someone presented a new concept to you, and instead of digging in, heels in and saying, "Oh, no, I'm going to stick to what everyone else says," you took a leap of faith, and it clicked to you, and it made sense, and you decided to move forward with that. That's amazing. And so because we do get a lot of bullshit from people, and it's always the few that are the loudest. I'm sure we can agree with that. And we hear some things and whatnot. Hearing words of encouragement, like what you just said, is awesome. And when we get someone that sends us an email through our like chat bot on the website, and they're like, hey, here's my story, this is how it's helped me. Hearing those things, like, people don't understand how much those kind words mean to us. So I can't thank you enough for sharing that. And there's something else I'd like to make a comment on, which is when you said you were doing what you thought. Okay. So I, and we, Trichome, and even you right now, we are doing what we think, and we're sharing what we think is as accurate and as scientific and informative as we can. And we're not just throwing opinions around. We're not just saying it's this. I try to make it very clear when I have an opinion, I have a hypothesis, or I have like a bunch of data that I can direct to,
I love that.
And I'm trying to separate me out of that. I do have a lot of opinions, and hopefully people can hear there's a difference. So when there's an opinion versus here's the data, and I talk to this researcher, and there's this, and I have plenty of references for a lot of things that can come to show. But here's the thing: there are things that I referenced in the past, even 4 or 5 years ago, that in 2020, 2021, and even in 2022 have already been disproven. Especially for some reason, like there was some stuff that came out in 20 and 21 that just like totally debunked so many things about terpenes that people claim in the industry. And I was almost frothing at the mouth because there are ideas and concepts that I thought that just didn't make sense. And same thing with Max. It's like, boom, here's some data. Well, here's the thing though. How good is that data? This new data, what makes it any better than the old one? Is it because it's new? How these studies are done, and the conditions that they're in, and how the data is interpreted, and then how that's explained in layman's to someone like me, like what we know today and what we think today may be what we thought in the future. Like it was a thought, it's something of the past. So one of the things that I encourage, I don't have to encourage you, but to the listeners here, is it is okay to be wrong when we're talking about cannabis, and it's okay to change your mind. I promise you, things in my cooking course will change. Not because just, oh, I'm going to change this. It's because data is going to change, or I'm going to have opinions that I express in the course. This is an opinion. I think this is true based off of all the things that I can connect to it or the research, but it may change. And when there are significant changes, we're going to make those changes. We did it with the interpreting course. For years, we followed the theory of ethnobotany and evolution, and regarding that there's cannabis is a multi-species plant, and then there's subspecies, and then there's like varieties from there. Well, genetic research from the mid to late teens up to like 2018 into 19, well, there's so much research done. They're showing like there is one species, and here's all the data. So we had to make that change. And it's like, well, it's like, it is what it is. And part of it was like tail between our legs a little bit, but then it was like, but no. Like, you can only go based off of what you know. There's been this century-long debate about the speciation of cannabis. Like, we're trying to rely on who we think has the best intel on this. And well, now thanks to like supercomputers and genetic decoding and all that, we can say like, it's not a big deal. Let's just switch. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's indica or sativa. For the majority of the population, maybe some breeders and strain hunters, it does matter at that point for finding some of these OG varieties. But anyway, so embrace change in this industry, because guess what? It's happening with or without us. Okay. So the more we are constantly pumping the brakes on change and letting our egos get in the way with change, the more information is festering, more disinformation or misinformation is festering, and the harder it's going to be to combat real misinformation about cannabis when it's coming from like the prohibitionists and some of the politicians that are just like, they're just, doesn't matter if they're right or left, they're just gone. They're obviously not looking at any of the data. They're just gone. They've got some corrupt agenda, and it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum they fall on. They're fucking corrupt, you know?
Yeah.
So like, just embrace the change and understand that, like, if someone disagrees with you, it's not about you. It's about the greater good. It's about normalizing this plant and all of that. So that's something that I don't say I battled with, but as like an educator in the space, I found that there were things that I said 4 or 5 years ago that I know for a fact are false today. I've deleted YouTube videos of mine from well before Trichome, because I was like, geez, all I'm doing is spewing out some of the same stuff, maybe a little bit of a twist. But for the most part, this concept here, like, Brandon, you're not any different than the random, you know, I won't paint a picture, random person on TikTok or on Reels or whatever that's saying this stuff. Mangoes get you higher and blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, is that harmful? Not really. It's like a white lie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just like, when you challenge those things and you can help people think critically, hopefully they won't believe everything that they hear about cannabis on both sides of the pro and against spectrum. So anyway, I'll pause there. Lots of words, but at the end of the day, folks, hey, it's okay to be wrong. Just don't be a dick about it.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I would rather be listening to and following people that were not stuck in their ways and not stuck in their beliefs, and that are constantly evolving and constantly learning. And there's a few too many of those that are stuck, and this is exactly the way it is. And that's, I love that. Listen, we've went for 2 hours. We're just sitting here messing around.
All right.
We've got to do this again. I'm
sure.
Like I said, I'm like halfway through the course right now. I'd like to have you come back maybe as soon as I finish it. And then I know I'm going to have like 50 more thousand questions than I already have right now. And again, I really appreciate you coming in and spreading your great knowledge. And I can't wait to get started with my new tea strainer, which I just picked up, by the way. So I'm thrilled to do that, and I'll let you know how that works out. And thank you again for everything that you guys did with Trichome, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. And hopefully, maybe we can even get Max with you, or we can, however.
Yeah. Well, Max will definitely be next, with or without me. I want to get you two connected. I know that you guys will have a whole other level of conversation that is not beyond me, but Max is the expert in, like outside of cannabis and whatnot. Like I sometimes letting him just go
scares the hell out of me.
It's also fascinating at the same time. It's just really interesting to watch. So let the two of you do that. Let's do another podcast together, and maybe it's just like spitfire of like questions from the course, and we'll just boom.
I'd love that.
Go through, and maybe like get into some more equipment. I can have some visual aids here, even if needed, with some of the stuff that I use. But you know what, man, I freaking love you. You are fantastic. You are such a blessing to this industry. You're a blessing for Trichome to have as such an amazing just fan. Like, you're a student, you're just a fan, and
I'm a student.
Really appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah. But thanks for being you, man. This is my pleasure, I assure you.
Yeah. Wow. You rock. All right. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everyone. And we will see you later this week. Bye.
See, I told you guys. Wasn't that a great interview? Brandon is the man. So many interesting pieces of information. I learned something every single day with this guy. Absolutely amazing. All right, well, that's our show for today. Oh, wait, there is one more thing. Hit it.
Hello smokers and vapors, I'm Herbert M. Green, and today I want to talk about something really cool I discovered recently. And that's this white wine, first of its kind in Holland, a white wine from Germany, paired with an American strain terpene profile Girl Scout cookies. And before I talk about the wine itself, I want to talk a little bit about the company that made it. It's called Sens Unique, and it's a Dutch company run by Arthur Heine. And he is a wine wholesaler that also has a passion for cannabis and especially terpenes. And he has done amazing things already with a fantastic beer he made, also infused with organic terpenes, all in a cannabis profile. It was masterful. You really had that herbaceousness of the strain he used. I think it was OG Kush, together with the nice bitter, almost IPA kind of beer. Then he moved on to a cannabis terpene flavored water, sparkling water, and that also was amazing. It was a very, as far as I remember, it was a very linalool heavy strain, and it had this amazing sweet flowery herbaceousness to it. Sens Unique doesn't only do beverages, by the way. They also create haute cuisine events where they pair cannabis terpenes, vaping cannabis together with haute cuisine and wine. So they try to get all senses and all taste buds of all these three different consumables together in something special. That's one of the things why I love that company. This wine that he made together with the winery in Germany is the winery Schmidt in Obermüstel. If you ever in the neighborhood, check them out. So yeah, the wine itself, I'm not a white wine enthusiast per se. I don't mind it, but this one really gave me the impression I could drink this all day. It's a dry white wine with on itself a perfectly balanced soury freshness with a nice and tangy, spicy aftertaste. Now couple that with the terpene profile he used in this wine, Girl Scout cookies, and that tops it all off and it gives it a more tropical fruit, almost pineapple highlight. It really balances each other out. It's not too sweet, even though you do get that sweetness from the Girl Scout cookies. You also get that flowery herbaceousness of the terpenes together with its already slightly acidic dry white palate. So all in all, it really blends well together. It complements each other. It doesn't offset anything. It's not too intrusive, the terpenes. It really blends with the wine. It's a perfect balance if you ask me. I think it pairs really well with Asian cuisine, stuff with lemongrass and ginger, maybe Vietnamese or dim sum, or it would match really well with asparagus. So I would suggest to reach out to Arthur Heine at Sens Unique, and you'll be amazed how terpenes can elevate a already good wine. So good job, Arthur. Good job, Sens Unique, and I will be back soon. Bye, guys.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Hooter here, back again with a brand new Bud Report. And you know what? I'm going right back to the same place that I was with my last Bud Report. Back down to Huelva, Spain, Still Ganja Social Club. This is 2 in a row with these guys. And this is Kush Sorbet. So this is kosher Kush crossed up with sorbet from DNA Genetics. Genotype subspecies Afghanica hybrid. This is broadleaf dominant. I'd call this a wham bam thank you ma'am bud because it just kicks your ass and puts you to sleep. This has a strong aroma potency. I picked up hints of chocolate and a little bit of myrcene. As we know, the proof is in the pudding. So let's take a look under the hood. Oh, see, this is beautiful. This is what I'm talking about. Just look at this. We have a many to dense trichome density, and most of them are milky heads as opposed to clear ones. I think I ended up with 5 very nice portraits out of this one bud. This is a bud to smoke just before going to sleep, and I slept like a baby. Let's try our new feature, the sticky, icky, hang time challenge. Let's go. Dude, 1 minute and 17 seconds, and I had to throw it off my thumb to get it off of there. I'm going to give this bud a 9. Yeah, a 9. That is outstanding. That's a Still Ganja Social Club down in Huelva, Spain, and I can't wait to go back there again. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, that's it for us for real now. We'll see you on Wednesday with a brand new Worldwide Bud Report right after I get this Tetris. What a great way to finish. Ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Big finish. Boom! Okay, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
It's Captain Hooter.